This podcast and show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of this podcast and show. It is not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions.
This YouTube podcast asks a question many people find themselves asking. How did I get here? When new information comes to light about the relationship, group, organization, or religion they may have been a part of, or you or someone you know may be considering signing up or having recently joined a group and now you're researching. Some might love the group and received amazing results but have concerns about the organization as a whole. Through discussing our experiences, thoughts, opinions, and criticism, and exercising free speech, it is our intention for people to have informed consent and to critically think for themselves. The How Did I Get Here YouTube podcast is hosted by Brian Nord and Eric Rojas. Eric was a staff member and participant for Landmark Worldwide for over a decade. He spoke up about his experience on episode number 1 of this YouTube podcast titled Past Staff Devastating Story. Brian was a staff member and instructor of Landmark Worldwide for 26 years and spoke out about his experience on growing up in Scientology, titled The Cult of Landmark. That interview is also on our channel. Our guest today is author of Is This a Cult? Ann L. Peterson. The book is available on Amazon. Ann was a wisdom course leader and a staff member for Landmark. She then worked for Werner Erhard from 2012 to 2020 on a public offering of a course in leadership that he had co-authored for universities. She was part of the Landmark world for 27 years. A brief history. Werner Erhard, creator of EST, the Forum, and the Landmark Forum. Landmark Worldwide programs and Landmark's business model were created by or based on his technology. These programs are categorized as something called a large group awareness training and have been both revered by many and also been a note of controversy for over 50 years, especially for what some say are heavy recruitment and high-pressure sales techniques and for an authoritarian style of management in their business. The staff members worked, with some exceptions, 12 to 14 hour days, 6 days a week for low or lower than average pay. Also, the organization has been relying on assistants or volunteers as its workforce, which has led to decades of issues with government authorities. From controversy with governments and the media, the Landmark operations in Sweden and France were closed, for example. As early as 1976, staff people have been going to the media about Werner Erhard and the company, alleging abuse and extreme cult-like behavior. These people have been accused by the organization, or better said, people from the organization, as using Werner's fame to benefit themselves or Landmark's brand, or they were disgruntled employees or quote-unquote incomplete. Simultaneously, people continue to credit the work created by Werner Erhard and out of doing the Landmark Forum to have changed the trajectory of their lives. In the early 1990s, there was a scathing piece on Werner Erhard on the TV program 60 Minutes in the US. In the piece, there were allegations of physical abuse by Werner, and there were allegations of sexual assault from one of his daughters. The sexual assault allegation was later recanted, according to Landmark. In the face of the PR nightmare, Werner Erhard sold the company to his employees and left the country. The new company was called Landmark Education, later rebranded Landmark Worldwide. In the 1990s, it survived the media hit and flourished. Over the next several decades, major companies like Reebok, Lululemon, and Panda Express publicly endorsed the company. According to an article in Time magazine, Landmark stated Werner was not involved with Landmark, although the writer suspected he was still behind the curtain. However, negative social media started coming in by the thousands. When you begin to type Landmark Forum or Landmark Worldwide into Google, it will autofill the word cult for you. There is countless of videos on YouTube, reviews online, forums online with people sharing negative and abusive examples. Landmark's Glassdoor page gives some very sharp opinions about working there at Landmark. Anne's book is a bombshell because it brings to light Werner Erhard of present times, and it started a fury of activity among former staff and leaders of Landmark, people who were highly involved publicly sharing their experiences. Our YouTube podcast is a direct product of her speaking up. In the last 6 months, there's been a 3-episode arc on the popular podcast A Little Bit Culty. Former Scientologist Chris Shelton has begun taking a dive into the world of Landmark and Werner on his podcast Speaking of Cults. In the last 6 months, the John Attack Family and Friends podcast has done several episodes with Dr. John Hunter on large group awareness trainings. In the last 6 months, another great YouTube podcast channel called Life After Landmark has started. Host Dale Dickens has been speaking out about Landmark for over a decade from her world in Australia. The most recent episode is a great interview with Riley Wilson, and there have been many, many more. There's been much, much more happening in this space. In this conversation today, we are talking to Anne about the book and the aftermath of having been the first to speak up publicly both about Werner and Landmark, and confronting the line between transformation and exploitation. We also will discuss the dilemma that many of our viewers and listeners face, which is the coursework changed their lives, they loved the community, and their experience was highly positive. So how do you reconcile taking your positive experiences with the darker side being discussed? In this episode, we will discuss that both may be true. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
Anne, it's just so great to have you with us this evening. And Eric, it's great to be with you. After listening to our whole intro, Anne, look at the stir you've caused.
I know.
I love the new intro though. That's so great because you just saved me like a half an hour of explanations, which might not have come up here, but on a lot of the other interviews I've been doing, I'm kind of like, when can we talk about the other stuff? Because everybody wants the background because they don't. Landmark has been so successful actually at suppressing any real conversation about their programs, about their environment, about their work, all of it. So anyway, I just love your new intro. That's awesome.
That's great. So Eric, do you want to ask our first question?
Well, Brian and I always like to start with what brings you here. And more specifically, what I wanted to ask is, I think people are familiar now with the book. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Anne's book that she wrote, Brian did a great job about going into that in the intro. And so for those that are familiar, and I guess both not familiar, what's happened, in the last 6 months? You have had countless staff members, former staff members, program leaders, graduates. They've reached out to you. They have said thank you. You have this now podcast show. We're bringing on guests. You've got Dale Dickens. You've got people with huge channels talking about Landmark and Werner, which has been unseen. So what's that been like for you? And it's just kind of, let's pick up right there.
Thanks, Eric. It's been challenging, actually. It's been a huge roller coaster. Honestly, I spent, I won't tell too much about what's in the book because you can read the book to get the story. But, from 2020, which is when I really experienced, I would say, my betrayal, my heartbreak moments with the organization I had essentially given my life to, Landmark. And then I spent, 2 or 3 years kind of trying to navigate that and trying to just get over it and trying to move on and not, all the things that you do. And I was kind of cut off from most of my circle because I knew all this stuff that it's not even that I couldn't tell people. It's that if I told them, it would shatter their fantasy too. And I didn't want to do that. And so I was pretty isolated and alone. And then as things continued to happen and evolve and, Landmark continued to sort of double and triple down on tying itself back into its roots with Werner and all that, I really felt like I had to send up a warning flag. And so that I had actually forgotten that. So I was preparing for this podcast and Brian had told me he's going to ask a little bit about this. And I was like, well, where was I when the book came out? Like I had to sit down and put myself back in that state. And, for me, the book was really sharing my story as a way to start to open the door for what I know is coming. So there's more. I've been being contacted by reporters and stuff for a couple of years as some staff members, just the, as a handful of staff members that worked around Werner that I was very close with because I hosted him, started coming to me asking for help regarding abuse they were experiencing. That was kind of like the starter. That wasn't the huge heartbreak that it was really Landmark's sort of doubling down and on not supporting that exactly, but they weren't going to do anything about it. So when they were notified, because they supply a lot of the employees, rather than having the kind of response I would have expected from the organization I thought I was a part of, which is like, oh my gosh, thank you for telling us. We will investigate,
which you would have expected any decent organization to do.
Yeah, like just basic human decency. Forget an organization that says it's about a world that works for everyone and integrity and all that. And that wasn't the response. And God, I feel almost silly for saying it now because I was like, well, I guess the CEO is his brother. And the head of the centers division is his sister, which I kind of knew that, but I still never really was fully connected to it like a family, right? So anyway, I'll let folks get the rest from the book. But so
I think what you're discussing there is really powerful. And, a lot of comments have come across the Landmark Facebook world. I don't know if this has hit any other platforms, but with accusing you of having this title, "Is This a Cult?" be clickbait.
Yeah.
And so when did first of all, that question used to be on my corporate Q&A. So
right.
I personally found it incredibly clever. And Rick Ross, the foreword by Rick Ross for me was what threw me. Like, I was like, oh,
it was huge. Yeah.
That made a lot of people nutty.
It just got real. It got real. So
got real.
And what's Rick Ross, if people don't know, wrote the foreword to Anne's book, and he's one of the top cult experts. And I called him after I read her book, and he said Landmark is not a cult. On no uncertain terms, he was clear about that. And but he still wrote the foreword to the book. And so my question to you, because I believe a lot of people have asked that question. I didn't ask myself that question until I was 25 years in. I was like, oh, whoa, wait.
Well, like you said, Brian, like so any of us who led programs, we answered that question in guest rooms, and we've.
But my question to you is that what the book did you have a time period of asking yourself that question? Is this a cult? Did you?
Well, yes.
Is that kind of, to me, that's how I took the book. Like, whoa, wait. I've been here for 27 years. Wait, is this a cult? After 27 years. I took it.
you've got the inflection perfect, because after this kind of this information starts coming into me in 2020, and then I'm like, what do I, I'm dealing with, my own trying to understand what's going on, what I've been a part of, like, and so I start asking myself that question, like, wait, is this and here's why I asked it, okay? And it really is a question, and I invite people in the book to answer it for themselves. Don't take my answer or Rick Ross's answer or Brian's answer or whatever. My answer actually is changing as I discover more and more information, even from what I wrote in the book. But I literally wanted to know, like, I couldn't reconcile what I was hearing, not only with the organization that as I had understood it, but also as any organization that wants to be in a profitable business. Like, why are they making such stupid choices? Why is the CEO knowing that the founder, the source, as they call him, is currently being accused by a whole group of people of really yucky assault? I don't go into any of the details, but trust me, it's not pretty. And but why is he covering up for that? Why are they tying back? I don't remember when it was, but the website at some point changed, like 2022, 2023, like celebrating 50 years. Why are they tying themselves back to Est? And I couldn't, like, the decisions at a time when the organization was in deep trouble didn't make sense to me. And I had been an integral part of this organization. I had just run kind of a side business that was supporting the organization and the work. I know what it looks like to fill programs and run. I couldn't figure out, why are they making these decisions? And that's where the question came from. Is this a cult? Because the cult lens was the only lens that started to have it make sense what was going on the inside, not on the outside of the program level, but on the inside, which is where I now was. So that's why the book is titled that, because I was like really sincerely like, wait a minute, I don't understand. These things don't make sense. But when I put that lens in, suddenly they did make sense. Certain aspects made sense. But then, can I circle to Eric's question? Because that's like the perfect setup. So the day I put the book out, and I'll never forget, March 7th was our book launch. We did a private book launch at Thursday night by invitation only. And this was all very planned. And then we did Friday, I was going to go live on my socials. And I knew that's when Landmark, my friends, like my whole community, my whole life, almost everybody's Landmark, people would find out. And my story, it's deeply personal memoir that I write. Everybody was going to find out. And so literally 4 p.m., I'll never forget when I hit enter on that first Facebook post. And I was really nervous and really scared, actually. But I just couldn't live with myself, honestly. I felt like if I didn't throw up the warning alarm to all the people that cared so deeply about Landmark and its work in the world, they were going to continue to follow Werner off a cliff. That was my mindset at that moment. And I wanted to, like, stop that. I didn't want to necessarily even vilify Werner. I just was like, no, that doesn't work for who we are today and who we could be. And that was still a we at that point. So when I say we in that context, it was, I was part of Landmark in a way. I gave my life to that organization. So, and to the mission, it was more about the mission than the organization. But still, then I got flooded, probably 3 or 4 weeks steady. I had channels of communication I didn't even know I had. I have messages pouring in from all over the world across a 50-year span of people who have participated in Est, Werner Erhard and Associates, Landmark, messaging me with the most, what I never, ever, ever could have expected, which was, thank you. Thank you. Same here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're talking about this. Can I talk about this now? I've wanted to talk about this for years. I've wanted to talk about what doesn't work in this organization. I've tried everything. I can't even tell you how many people have told me about their trips to the top, their trips all the way up to the Rosenberg, through every line of committed speaking and listening. Some people have been fired at the top. Most of them have been gaslit. But just again and again and again. And so then it was kind of full circle. So here we are with even more evidence that when the complaints and the things that don't work in the business operations, in the programs get expressed, they get suppressed. So so my question of, is this a cult, is almost stronger today than it was the day that I published the book, for me personally, only because I've now heard from so many people. And I can, and I'm sure there's lots of people that are angry at me, and I've heard from, I can count on my hands how many have actually like said something or contacted me or been, yucky on my Facebook, or whatever. I have a public Facebook profile. But that was all also planned. Like, I decided that I would come forward and that I would talk, and that hopefully in doing that, other people would talk as well, and that we could start to have a real conversation about this work, this organization, which I now see. I've learned so much. I mean, anyway, I'll pause right there because I've now I'm PhD program.
No, it's good. The question, Anne, it's great. Just to further this question is now, like, you remind me a lot of me. You're very quick and you're very smart. And my therapist keeps pointing out this thing to me that I don't really like. She's like, where are the emotions? So what's it been like for you? Like, how has this been for you? You've got people accusing you of that this book is all just to funnel you to your business. You've got people that
it's
are
a money grab
on the other side, but on the other side, in one of your, it's a money grab.
About 25K upside down. Let me know when it turns into a money grab, somebody, please.
No, but it's just when people say that.
Yeah, there's negative comments. Sorry, Eric. Yeah. I didn't mean to podcast explain you. But you, on the other side, you shared in one of the other interviews that you've had women come to you that said that makes me cry. Their center manager had coached them to have an abortion because they wouldn't be able to remain on staff predictably if they had a child. You have people like Eric come to you with his story. I mean, there's just like all these stories and all this pain and real abuse. And then there's those people who worked with Werner Erhard, who he would show the Army movie Full Metal Jacket to, basically saying, I'm going to scream at you in your face. I'm going to abuse you. They didn't even know if being physically thrown or things thrown at them, if that is even abuse, because they had been told that this was like the best training in the whole world to be with someone treating you that way, who are now no longer working for him, and they are messed up trying to get their lives together after being in this organization. So what's that been like for you, having been the person to put herself out there and to receive, the thank yous, the, pardon my language, the fuck yous, and to receive like this huge amount of pain?
I have a ritual act. So I'm very well supported. I share often. I have a spiritual teacher, a coach, and a therapist that I work with officially. And then I have an address book full of amazing people like you that I process and talk with a lot. But I'll have to, it's been shocking. Like every time I think I can't be shocked, somebody else tells me another story and I'm shocked. What I thought I was exposing was the little microcosm around Werner. And I was exploring how that microcosm was impactful in the organization Landmark. I came into Landmark when there was no Werner. So what's been mostly shocking is to find out that environment around him is baked into Landmark as an organization and in the culture. Like, I didn't know that the centers division was so utterly abusive. I've learned a lot about what is abuse, to be honest. Like, those people came to me with really obvious questions like, is there any circumstance in which, somebody training you can put their hands on you and hurt you? Like, I'm like, what? No, I mean, that was obvious to me. But now I've learned, like, folks, look up the word abuse, look up assault, and you will, if you were on staff particularly, and especially if you were in the centers division, you will find it shockingly familiar. So it's just like shock after shock, and then a lot of grief. I've spent a lot of time crying. It really is like going through a grieving process, like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was. And then pulling yourself apart from that. Wait, did I enable that? Did I miss it? So there's a lot of we're already sort of taught to over self-evaluate in Landmark anyway. Thanks to a lot of training post Landmark. I actually left my Landmark staff experience in 2012, and I started immediately participating in other work, spiritual work, and other developmental work, which I'm very grateful for. I don't think I could have come through this as well as I feel I have. It's a struggle to remember to take care of myself. My daughter called me 2 weeks ago crying and said, Mom, I feel like our whole life is about Landmark again, and we had just gotten away. And those of you that read the book, you'll discover that my daughter paid probably the highest price of anybody in my family for my participation. And because she experienced some pretty extreme abuse while I was off transforming the world. And so really, honestly,
by the way, that's that takes a lot of courage of your daughter to have let you shared her story in your book, and for you to be sharing that, and to I know you've quoted this, but in the movie The Vow, Mark Vicente says, nobody joins a cult, they join a good thing.
Yes.
And I don't actually, my opinion about it is that it's not a cult, but and I think the general people can participate through it fine. I've seen a million stories of that, but as you basically start getting into leadership, things can go really bad really fast for people.
Yeah.
They can be great too, I admit that, but they also can be really bad. And and there's and the closer I got up, the more, especially during the pandemic when things were going badly, because they couldn't do live things. And so watching, it really teaches you how people really are when you're in a crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was going to say something to you, Anne. So I really appreciate you being so open about your daughter. I think a lot of people have been through that experience of feeling like they, there is, I talked about this when I was first interviewed. It's a very biting commentary in a TV show called Weeds. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I love Weeds.
Yeah. Well, there's an episode where this girl is like smoking pot, and she's like 13, and she's like, oh yeah, my mom's over at the hotel at her Landmark forum. And, they're making a comment about, about the whole entire situation in that show. But I believe that that's a big part of the story. And I worked with people over the years who were children. They were like first generation Landmark kids. And they had a lot of issues. Even those that did stuff at Landmark had a lot of issues with their whole life being about Landmark growing up. Yep. And everything being
there's a lot of collateral damage. So, one of the questions that a number of interviewers have asked me is like, what do you think is the most dangerous thing about Landmark? Which is getting harder and harder to answer each month that I study and learn more, because it's expanding, right? So I would have, for sure, I've now heard from many staff members who have experienced direct physical, emotional, and verbal assault and abuse. So hands down, no bueno. Like, and I'm so deeply
the centers
sad.
division. The centers division
breeds
that whole thing.
Yeah, where that lives, but not exclusively. I've now heard of people even in the wisdom area and whatnot.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I mean, if you're in that culture,
family division, the whole thing.
Yeah. The other thing to me that I've come to understand I'm studying a lot more about LGATs, because my passion, where my interest in, is how can we do personal development safely? But to answer that question, you have to get a deep understanding of what's unsafe about it. So I'm kind of in the deep dive about what's unsafe. And of course, I'm looking at Landmark, but I'm not just at Landmark, at many other similar Life Springs, Context. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of spinoffs. Most of them did spin out of EST in some way, shape, or form, sanctioned or unsanctioned. But it's also what didn't happen while you're there. So while you're there, whether it's as a participant or a program leader or a person who assists or a staff member, whatever level, but while you're doing Landmark, there's a lot that you're not doing. So whether it's in time, I was not there for my daughter. I was, I thought, oh, this is so great. She can be with her dad on the weekends. I fly off and lead on the weekends. I come home. I'm working from home all week, so I'm there. Never mind, I'm on the phone from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Right.
And when my daughter went off to college, she actually asked me to make her a tape of me talking through the walls, because that's what she learned to fall asleep to. Because my office was her bedroom.
Jeez.
And and she loved, there was parts she loved.
That's like her ASMR is you on
talking.
A coaching call. That's
exactly. Exactly. But
so,
she's in an abusive environment with her dad. She was in another environment, a childcare option, where she got sexually assaulted. I mean, it was terrible. And so I was missing all that. Even when she did the forum for young people, she kind of tried to tell me, but I didn't. When she told me what she told me, which was kind of a light, thing, that some girl made her do with a boy in a tree house kind of thing. But I didn't go to health professionals to seek help about that. I went to my Landmark coaches and teachers, who honestly had some good things to say, but they weren't trained in that. They weren't trained in what to look for. They weren't trained. So, it just kind of moved on. So there's a lot. My husband and I met my husband at Landmark. We had an SEL, self-expression leadership program project, was our wedding. It was a whole community. It was beautiful. It was fabulous. But we didn't really learn how to be married until the pandemic. And we had to get a marriage counselor because we were going to break up, because he was driving me crazy. Because it was the first time we really had to live together. But it wasn't at Landmark that we learned how to be married. It was through our spiritual work that we do together. And it was with a relationship counselor. So I think, and now I've been talking with Dr. John Hunter, and I'm starting to talk to some psychiatrists and some different things, and really starting to examine the work itself. And I wrote this thing down I wanted to make sure to say tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, when I wrote the book, I meant it to be a warning. And I meant it to be a warning about alert, alert, alert. If you keep going to the past, you're going to undermine the organization, and you're going to take away, don't do that. And I wanted to have the conversation. Every cult circle is already talking about Landmark. So I was like, well, I can talk about Landmark, but I'll tell the whole story because I've been in there. So I wanted to be fair. So I write the book as a warning, kind of, right? I start hearing from hundreds of people. I start to learn that the culture is toxic. And then
you said you wrote it as a warning to say, hey, this is happening with Werner and his inner circles to the Landmark community.
Yeah.
Or I guess to the public.
Well, the thing that tipped me off, that had me decide to write the book, which literally I decided in September, wrote it over the Thanksgiving break, published it by March. That was a very, very fast decision. And was when the news came out, when they started trying to fundraise for the library, and they were retying Landmark back up to Werner. And I knew that they were consulting with him heavily, because when we were in the Being a Leader project, I was in a lot of back rooms, and I knew that he had started consulting on the forum, which I didn't think that was necessarily bad, but him getting involved in the business operations was definitely a bad idea. And then as I started to read, I got introduced to Outrageous Betrayal by Steve Pressman, and I started to really learn the true history, not the one that I got from the corporate Q&A from Landmark. Yeah, that one.
The one you were taught.
Yeah. So as I start to learn all that, and I say this in the book, I said, look, we are moving towards a safe-seeking era. That we know as a society that there's a lot of problems in the personal development field. And in my mind, organizations that do self-help and personal development were going to have to start to step up to the plate to be safer, more ethical, or they were going to lose market share and go out of business because people aren't tolerating that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched academics come after Werner for the use of the word sweetheart. Like a lot of the stuff that used to be okay just isn't okay in our society anymore. I loved your guest that talked about Black Lives Matter, and I have tons to say about that. But so I was kind of like, look, update, be a leader in where we're going, or step aside. That was kind of where I end the book a little bit, right? With a challenge to Landmark. And I made a statement about they've done a lot of reinventions. I know they're doing a reinvention right now, partially forced because of the pandemic. And they'll come out and they'll have they'll basically change the furniture in the house. They'll change the drapes, they'll move the furniture around. But changing the furniture will not work. They've got to look at the source material. They've got to, and now I'm talking to a number of old EST people who are actually telling me about what the work and the ideas were really started out as. And trust me, guys, what they're being taught like now is not even that. And I wanted to sort out that baby from the bathwater, but if they don't look at the foundation and they don't look right into really understand, I don't think they understand that they're leading an LGAT. What's dangerous about an LGAT, large group awareness training, they're not asking themselves, why all these people keep asking if we're a cult after all these years? Mm-hmm. And it isn't, hint, it isn't because it's tied to Werner, because they erased Werner for 20 years and everybody was still asking the question.
Yeah.
Countries were still, France kicked him out, Sweden kicked him out, many different Amsterdam, like have said, no, you can't do business here. And then they go, okay, well, it's these bad business practices, but it's not just that either. Like,
no,
gotta look at the source. The abuse, I now believe the abuse is built into the methodology, and it's built in that whole thing about the whole idea that in order to build a person up to a possibility, you got to tear them down first. And we now know that's not true. We now do brain imaging, and we know when you freeze a person's brain and put them into their sympathetic nervous system, you're not actually transforming them. You're shocking them.
Yeah.
And then you bring them up and create an artificial high, and it's not real.
Anne, let me interrupt you. Sorry.
I'll pause right there.
No, it's very good. So now I'm just going to be devil's advocate, because I would say that over the years, especially over the last 10, 12 years, if you took the forum, you would not be being confronted by the course leader. I think, they've really developed the program in a way. I'm not saying that people don't have to kind of I don't like the word tear up, but like bring out some emotional trauma or thing that's really bothering them, or however you want to put that. But it gets deep on that level. I think it gets very deep. But the way they've designed it is really to have the questions and the way it's engaged with, for the person to have to confront themselves much more than it is. I mean, I could be wrong. And there's always, when it comes to Landmark, there's always different situations because there's different leaders, there's different moments. Sometimes, like one of the people that I had do the forum online, the course leader asked them, I'm kind of answering my own question, but the course leader on Sunday morning, I started getting text messages like, I want to leave. And I'm like, what's going on? And so they're like, the course leader was telling them that everybody they asked who's invited somebody for Tuesday night on Sunday morning. And very few people raised their virtual hand or their physical hand. And they called them a bunch of mamby-pambies and went on like a 20-minute rant about how they were all being weak and they weren't going to have their transformation unless they shared. And in our comments on our channel, a woman said that she was in a satellite seminar with Werner in the 80s. And he screamed at the top of his lungs, "No guests, no work. No guests, no work. You can't have the work without guests." Well, they've changed that. The lighter version is no sharing, no transformation.
Yeah,
The
it's all
point
the
is,
same stuff, Bri.
it just wasn't him. Nobody screamed at them at the top of their lungs like Werner Erhard would do it, but it was still very confronting. But I don't know if that was an exception to the average forum these days or not. It's hard to tell. But
Well,
I
you're
do
also
think,
trapped in that space, you know, so it's like you're not unless you're going to log off the Zoom or something like that. But that alone is confronting that you've made an agreement to be there the entire time.
Look,
oh yeah,
Bri, I was dying to know. I think you and I live, honestly, honest to God, and partially it's because of who we are, and I like who we are, and I don't intend to change it, but I think we lived in a little bit of a happy bubble. So I have heard, and you know, some of that shit doesn't happen around us or me because I would call it out. I would be like, no, that's not right. You know, and that happened. My husband was a center manager for many years. He walked into the Dallas Center. He heard a center manager, this is in the mid 2000s, berating a staff member and telling them that she's going to take part of their pay because she has to do their job. He called HR immediately and said, hello, I was the center manager. This is totally inappropriate. We don't do this in our organization because there are good people, a lot of them in this organization. HR, she disappeared a week later. And guess what? They transferred her. They didn't fire her. They didn't, you know, whatever. They transferred her to Australia, which he found out later. And then he was told that transferred her to Australia because, well, they're not pansies down there and they can take it. And, you know, I heard from a woman 2 months ago who was registered in a forum, read my book, went and did the forum anyway, and called me right after. She called me on the Monday. And I was like dying of curiosity because I'm like, well, what's it like now? You know, you don't have this personal experience. And whether they're yelling at you or not, there's a whole communication that's happening in the group, in the way, you know, you conform immediately to the group. And Dr. John Hunter's work on large group awareness trainings and how that puts us in a hypomanic state and whatnot is brilliant. But yeah, I asked this gal, I said, well, how was it? And she clearly had a big background. She had a therapeutic background and whatnot. She said, well, actually, I thought the ideas, which are not original, but they were packaged very well and I got some value out of them. And I think we can swear here, right? She goes, and I think it's dangerous as fuck. And I was shocked. This is 2 months ago. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, the whole tear them down to bring us up thing is so unnecessary. She goes, I think I would have gotten the same value. She said, I had to sit there and listen to the forum leader several times tell us all about what assholes we were and how our lives don't work and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, really? Now, I'm going to be honest. I haven't done a landmark forum since I think I did the first one in like 1995. I reviewed it somewhere in the early 2000s, I think. And I'm going to confess, I figured out how to sleep with my hands like this, and I slept there.
Well, this is really surprising because Landmark's been talking about this whole new era stuff, and that this person had that experience in the forum 2 months ago. It's like shocking.
Yeah, I mean,
but at the same time, I'm not surprised.
Well, I think what's really fascinating is the whole journey from your kind of like, I forget what you called it, your moment in 2020 when you like, whoa.
I call it my betrayal year. It's the heartbreak. I mean, it was when I.
Yeah. So what then you do, you start unpacking or deconstructing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And this, I believe, has been happening to people for years. And so I've been working through mine and I've been listening to other things. And the thing about it is that so many people are like, you know, like we did an episode on love bombing and a very good friend of mine was like, yeah, but we weren't love bombing people. And you know that, Brian. And the truth is we weren't. That's not how love bombing works. The way it works is it sets something up later down the road for people. But that whole initial group thing, I believe. But we weren't love bombing. I authentically gave a shit about the people that were in my introductions and the people in my seminars. I wasn't like, love bombing makes it sound like you're intentionally being malicious. So, but what my point is that I've been picking all this apart. Okay. Sometimes every time we do this, I think about it more the day after we did it than getting ready for it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, wow. However, with my committed listener, the main one I had for many years, they
translation, that's your
really
manager, right?
my manager at Landmark. It's called Your Committed Listener. But I really felt like they believed in me in a way nobody else ever had. But they also would take that love away in a heartbeat, and I would do whatever I needed to do to earn that love.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I wouldn't even had been in that situation to begin with had I not had such deep trust in the social group experience that I had at Land. So when I start seeing these behaviors or are being that way myself with people, I'm not questioning any of it. I actually think it's provocative, it's cutting edge, and we're the people who really are leading the way. That this is outside of the normal human condition. And they say in these groups that they always set it up in a way that somehow we're the special people. Now, a lot of the consumers will say, oh, no, that's not true. But that is absolutely the case when you are a seminar leader or a staff member. That's my main experience. It is like there is a world
You're an
out
elite
there.
human being.
Well, what they train you in is there's this thing called the human condition. And all of humanity is sucked into it. And the human condition consists of right, wrong, looking good, avoiding looking bad, all that kind of world of what it really means to be a human being in current form. And to be a graduate, to be a staff member, to be a seminar leader is to be somebody who is creating a new possibility for being of what it means to be a human being. And we are the great experiment. We are the ones who we have the answer that could have the world work for everyone. We are beyond making changes in society. We can actually cause a societal transformation. So that whole setup.
I can take much more, Brian.
What's that?
I don't know if I can take much more. Anyway.
So that whole setup, that whole world that you're in, and you see that, then that means part of that is you are your word no matter what. Or, like they say in one of the seminars, you are your word or you exhaust yourself in every way trying. Why am I saying all this? Because now, as I go back to the 70s, I was watching this other podcast about Scientology, and he made a really good point that psychology is no victim in any of this, that psychology has done terrible things to people, that there was a lot of distrust in psychology when you go back into the 1970s. There were all sorts of Scientology. It was actually Scientology has been growing and evolving and improving for decades. And you could say so has the large group awareness trainings. So what's the deal? I mean, it's kind of like seems a little unfair. I'm just like thinking about this from the Landmark perspective. However, as I've been doing my deconstruction in all this, there are all these terms that I have learned in the last 10 years at Landmark. Things like cognitive dissonance. Well, how did I learn about cognitive dissonance? I learned it from Werner Erhard. It is in his leadership course. Except what he created cognitive dissonance to be in the leadership course is people having dissonance with him and what he's saying.
Well, he absconds with, like all thought leaders, gurus, cult leaders, whatever. He takes a bunch of knowledge and ideas from all kinds of places. I've now talked to enough Scientologists to be very, very clear that Landmark is indeed Scientology light. I finally just finished watching Going Clear, the movie. I couldn't watch it 3 years ago because I was so freaked out. There's actually a man in our chat who was there, who was Ed Gerwitz is in there chatting. Ed was a part of the Landmark, the creation. He's I can't remember, sorry, Ed, if I'm going to get it right, psychiatrist or psychologist who was there with Werner, helped create the work. They take a bunch of different ideas, package it up in a different way, and sell it. And Werner, no, I don't think anybody, I've talked to a number of people that were there with him at the time. I don't think anybody was more surprised by Werner's fame than Werner himself. But he sold himself to that fame. He went the way of the fame and the money and all of that, which is easy to do. Honestly, I don't think I've worked now with 4 or 5 major gurus, and half of them have gone this way, the other half didn't, that I worked with. And so
well,
I think, Brian, I think it's really important though, because you're laying out a bunch of pieces. But yes, we absolutely love bombed at Landmark. That's how they got you. That's how they got you to be exploited. That's how we exploited you. That's how I was exploited. I was correct. Now I am fabulous. I am great. I did contribute. I can hold that. But I also can recognize where that was used to get me to work for a very low wage, a lot of hours, and do a lot of registrations for them. I forwarded their business, which didn't become a problem for me until I left their business. And then I'm suddenly unmarketable and unemployable and I have a problem, because when you go out in the rest of the world and you say, oh, well, I've been a leader for Landmark, unless you're talking to a Landmarkian about that, they're going to say, isn't that a cult? And you're going to have to figure out how to explain that you got all these amazing talents and skills, but, oh, sorry, it was from an organization that's pretty culty. And that's when reality hits. And I'm talking to dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of staff members that have found themselves in the same position. They're off staff. They can't support themselves. They're sick because they've just spent however many years in their sympathetic nervous system. I have an autoimmune disease. You know, the damage is real. And
well, I want to talk about that for a second. So, and I know I kind of we can pick apart what I had to say, or we can get over it. I have
great.
A couple thoughts.
He didn't sell himself to fame. He sold himself for fame. That's right. Anyway, sorry. Yes. The comments. That's brilliant.
Definitely.
Okay.
Totally.
So, but this is important for me, at least, that because nobody makes this point. So the Full Metal Jacket video that you bring up. Okay.
Yeah, that's another side.
So if you haven't seen that movie, I also heard of
it's a very specific clip, right? And that he shares with people.
Yeah, so he shares a very I link it in my book. If you get the Kindle version, you'll get the link. But he shares a very specific video, and he shares this with people who are going to be working in the inner sanctum, where you're going to be around him and his staff that's around him. And I don't remember anything he said about it. I just remember him showing it. And basically the explanation was, you're going to see me be very abrasive and very harsh with my staff. And we were told they agreed to it, which I now know that you cannot illegally agree to verbal abuse. And it is verbal abuse. It's not harsh, calling you to be, even though that's what we're told. But when you observe it for a little while, that is not what it is. They're calling people vile names, scum of the earth. Like, it's terrible. It is straight up verbal abuse. And
it's awful.
And that happens in Landmark staff. I now know.
Okay, good. So just slow down. So that's so
he shows that video.
Slow down. Hold on. So let's just give it, I would love for people to really let this in. So to go to work with Werner Erhard, you watch videos and you sign on for being yelled at and being demeaned and spoken to in these ways. And
don't actually, Brian. You don't. That's incorrect.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Is that, do people, because sometimes people will ask, well, they signed up for this or they agreed to this. Do they agree to this from the beginning?
As an observer. So I'm hosting a program. Now you got to keep in mind, I'm the cash cow in this scenario.
No, we get that. But tell me about his staff. Did they not watch the Full Metal Jacket video themselves?
We only know a little bit, because most of them, they are currently have been pursued and sued to being told to shut up and not talk. So I have to be careful about what I can say. But what I can tell you is, because I did get to ask the question later, I had, and my little team and the colleagues that are working in the inner sanctum as they're developing this course, we're shown this video. We're told, you're going to see me being harsh. Don't worry. They agree to it. We're told that the observers, they agree to it. And my promise to them is that they will be more than a fart in the wind. They will be a force in the universe. And so that's kind of the enrollment conversation.
Now, I want to say something about this. Okay. So in the last 5, 6, 7 years, all of the center managers had been being asked to find aides for Werner.
Yeah.
So I know because I was one of them.
Yeah.
So then I would offer names, and it came back to me that the people I named were too old, even though they met the criteria. And they were looking for people that were younger for some reason. And this is now my opinion of this matter is that because people who are younger are much more impressionable or willing to buy into all that or whatever.
Completely. And you don't know.
Well, how old were you guys when you got sucked into staff?
I was 20.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s. And,
I didn't know when on staff.
I was 18 when I went on staff. Yeah. But what I was saying was I didn't know, like for me, for example, I didn't know that it was inappropriate or that it was abusive to have my center manager choke me out for not keeping the registration targets.
Which freaked me out. Eric, you were the first person that I heard from that told me about physical assault as a staff member in a landmark staff center in the 2000s. Because I thought, look, it's clear to me, in my opinion, from things that I've learned is, Werner's kind of likely a straight up sort of domestic abuser, in some form. If once you see the 60-minute videos, there's accusations, there's books, there's newspaper articles going back
50 years.
Physical abuse, right? And it's the exact same physical abuse that people came to me starting in 2018, 2019, tell me about.
Okay, slow down. What is you don't have to say what people said to you, but what is that physical abuse like? Is there a way you could describe it?
Well, the way Eric described, when Eric described to me, and he does in the podcast that you guys shared, when he describes to me his center manager, was actually much more willful and scary what was done to you, Eric. Werner's abuse is more abrupt. It's more explosive. Like he could be fine, and then, choking you or punching you in the stomach or, pinning you to the bed and hitting you about the head. Like those were the things that were shared with me. I did not witness those things. Those were things that were shared with me. And literally people were asking me, like, is that a training technique? I'm like, no, it's not. And and it's more explosive. It's more compulsive, if you will. So to me, it sounds
like I hear it like a burst. It could happen in a second, a flash of anger, and something gets thrown at somebody or something. And then it's kind of like as if it never happened, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then you might get some cash to get paid off. You might get, and then you get so if anybody studies the abuse cycle, it's very much like that, I don't know whether he apologizes or whatnot, but he definitely, I know different times he's promised people to not do it again and so on. But in my view, Werner he's ill. Like he's just, he's ill. It's just really that simple to me. Like he's ill and he's not responsible for his own behavior. But I don't even think he's the worst criminal in it. To me, the people are the people around him. So Harry knows about that, and then he keeps feeding people to him. I think Harry is more culpable than even Werner himself. If I turn around and I hand an alcoholic bottle after bottle after bottle of alcohol, at a certain point, I'm the problem more than the alcoholic. So that's where I start to get angry because this makes me really angry. The betrayal is much bigger. Werner is Werner, okay? And I don't know, weirdly, I have a kind of level of compassion and understanding for him, probably because I've done a lot of work to understand that kind of abuse and how it works. The people who go on staff, just like Riley was talking about Introduction Leaders Program yesterday on an episode with Dale and her show, and how you're told you're going to be this force and you're going to be able to do anything and la la la, but then what's actually happening is you're sitting there, with somebody next to you, basically forcing you to register your Nana in the Landmark Forum and pay for it and drive 8 hours to sit with her and all this stuff to get a registration. It's not that different. Yeah. I did get to ask some of Werner's staff finally at one point. I said, well, hey, we were always told that you guys agree to that kind of treatment. By now, I've talked to a lawyer friend who's educated me that you can't actually agree to be abused. That's not a thing. I didn't know that. I had to learn that. And I asked them, I said, do you agree to that? And they said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely.
So I was having a conversation with a graduate who, I work, one of the geographical areas that I worked in was the San Diego area. And Mark Spiritos works in that particular area. And he similarly, like with you, with Werner, has a team of people called the Special Projects Team. And he was sharing with me that kind of like with the Werner situation, they'd ask the staff or the center manager who could be a good fit to go work on Mark Spiritos's Special Project Team. And I was asking,
is that a paid team, Eric? Was that a paid team?
It's not a paid team. It's an assisting team or a volunteer team. I don't know how they're managing this now with no people who assist, but it's in Mark Spiritos's.
I'm sure it's paid now. It's to whatever.
It's probably paid. It's probably paid now, right?
In the United States, they have to pay them. They pay them what I've been told, minimum wage for the state they're living in for a specified number of hours.
So the way So I was asking him, what is it that you agreed to? Because, I knew Mark Spiritos, I knew his wife, but I never was involved on the special project side. So I witnessed part of what he would quote train people in, right? But I didn't know what the agreement process looked like. And right now that you're talking about Werner and the whole thing, and agreeing to be abused and all that stuff, and I know that he's for sure verbally abusive to people, but he was saying that the agreement was that you were going to be trained and developed to be this type of person. And everything, there was no, you didn't know what that entailed. You didn't know what it looked like to be trained and developed. You just knew that that's what you were signing up for, and that you were going to be expected to, assist at X number of hours, and that you had these expectations. Like if Mark needed a ride to the airport, that you were going to do that. Or if, Mark needed his dry cleaning to be taken, that you were going to do that. But you didn't know that, you might be yelled at in the center, that you might be yelled at in his house because the drawer of miscellaneous things weren't organized to his standards. So I don't think people really know what they're really signing up for.
No, of course they don't. And they've already been conditioned by being in the programs. They've already had these emotionally intense experiences being in the programs. They're already fully indoctrinated. And yes, that term, I've now studied it and contrasted it with what goes on in the forum. It's completely appropriate. They've already been indoctrinated into a particular mindset. And it's not a mindset actually that I think even belongs just to Landmark. I think some of these behaviors are very much in our culture now as well. And, if you're a Landmarkian,
if you see the comment, it says, remember the wax on, wax off training to be coachable.
But I'm saying there's something
not question. But that's the indoctrination. It begins, that level of indoctrination is to be coachable, is a huge part of how people get into that whole thing. No, it's just great.
Coachable in what? That's even later. That's late in the indoctrination.
Well, in the wax in, wax off, you're coachable.
Well, in the video,
whatever Mr. Miyagi says.
It doesn't have to make sense to you. The programs are grooming. So long before you get wax on, wax off, if you look at an indoctrination cycle, that's like halfway through. Way before that is something. Way before that is oh my God, this is the best thing in the earth. Everybody on the planet needs this. Everybody's life will work. This whole complete false expectation that somehow always around the corner is the next amazing breakthrough that's going to have you be this extraordinary person with an incredible life. And then as soon as you get there, that's not the right one. There's another one, and there's another one, and there's another one. That's what I mean, the whole take you down to take you up cycle. This is not unique to Landmark. It's in a lot of different kinds of trainings. That all primes you up. And then all this propaganda that I loved it when the gal who was talking about Black Lives Matter, she touched on colonization, but what's at the heart of colonization? I have an idea for you. I have the answer for your life. I know how you can be a better human being, how you can be a better society, how you can be about all the missionaries that go to Africa and everywhere else with the answer. Groups like Landmark are not any different. They have the answer for you and your life and everybody else's life too. You just have to bring them. And the more you bring,
and it is the answer. There are no other answers. This is it.
That's what you sign up to be coached in. That's the point I'm trying to make, Brian. You sign up.
No, I get that. However, this is really good what you're saying. I still like Raymond, who I'm good friends with everybody, so do not rip him apart in the comments. Raymond is he's like, I loved everything I did. And they did, because when I went through the curriculum and the SELP and I got all these new friends in this community and I was being coachable, it was all very, and by the way, it was all very respectfully done, in my opinion. I was always treated well. I didn't have anything negative fallout. I didn't experience anything like any of these kinds of things people are saying. I loved it. I loved all of it. And however,
me too.
Then when 6 months after I do the forum, I'm in the Introduction Leaders program and I go on staff, right? They sat me down, and part of the thing that they would clear you on is that this is like being in the military.
Yes.
This is like this is like being in the army.
This is the Navy SEALs of, transformation.
Correct. Except here's the thing about this that I'm going to get a little infuriated about. So you work 70 plus hours a week. You assist on top of that. When they say it's like being in the military, it is. It is regimented every aspect of your life.
Right.
Hour by hour.
And hour by hour. So here's the question. My brother called me, and this was really powerful for me. He goes, I've been watching your YouTubes and I just want you to know. He started asking me all these questions. Now, my brother was in, he did two different tours in the Middle East. And I believe one was in Afghanistan and one was in Kuwait. He was sharing about when, he was asking me about how I'm doing right now. And he's like, is it like you need to sleep all the time? He went through this whole list. I'm like, yes. He goes, yeah. He goes, that is what it was like when I returned. It took me a long time. And so here's the question. Now, my brother gets a lot of support from all sorts of different places, but how does Werner Erhard or Joan and Harry Rosenberg or any of these people, how do they know they're not harming people by operating and working with their people at that intense level? I mean, that's my question.
They know they're harming people. This is why. I
know, but so does every graduate who doesn't want to have anything to do with being on staff and turns a blind eye.
They look at staff.
People who say I would never be on staff.
I would never be a seminar leader.
One. Sorry, Eric, we're all getting hoofy, but I'm the big gullible one who's like, we're doing nothing wrong, and just think everybody on Facebook has lived a wonderful life and they just completed so they could go have kids. Meanwhile, after I speak up, I swear, countless of conversations and people coming to me who'd been on staff, and what it took for them to readjust to civilian life and the pain, the damage, the harm. It's ridiculous. And these people are just like,
because you're driven, you're literally put into a hypomania state and driven into your sympathetic nervous system day in. That's why I don't know an ex-staff member who isn't sick. I literally don't. Yeah. I don't know one who isn't sick.
Well, I have a cold, but besides that, I don't think I'm physically sick at the moment. But
Yeah.
I will say that, but I was
you
ready.
left it, Brian, for other reasons, you know. You
Well, no, when
had you stayed there longer, you probably would have been left sick.
But you've
well,
been pretty amped up
could
too.
could have, but I also to remain on staff, I was diligent with my health. Like I ate no sugar for like 7 years straight. I worked out constantly and I made no other priorities in my life. So my well-being was number one, work was number, that was, and work was number one, well-being was number two. There wasn't really physically time for any other priorities besides those. So hopefully my doctor gives me a good, clear bill of health. But that took extreme actions on my part, in my opinion.
Well, there's well-being and there's the physicality, right? Like, so I have
my emotional well-being is a wreck right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's,
your emotional well-being, nervous system, like.
Well, yeah, because I don't want to go the landmark route with this. I don't want to get complete. I don't think this comes down to 4 questions. I am disgusted that this abuse happened, which is why I'm drilling and talking about it tonight, because it is insane. All these people, all these lawsuits, all these people that I never knew about,
That's what I mean, they know about it.
And how I treated people. Like, it never occurred to me that I was gaslighting people, like messing with their heads.
Yeah, we don't know. As program leaders, we're not taught really about what we're leading. We're only taught what to lead. And
correct.
Look, I worked in the division that did R&D, and Brian Regnier did encourage us to read and learn. But you only have time for a little bit, like even there, because you're still, you're just full-time occupied trying to do the work. You got a course to fill, right? So it's just now that I'm learning. Like I called a really good friend of mine a few months ago who was deep on staff for many years. And I said, in World Headquarters, I said, look, do you think they know that they are in a large group awareness training? And she said, oh, no, of course not. She said, they think there's something special. They think there's something other than that. And that's part of what my warning with my book was like, no, hey guys, everybody in the world is asking this question about you. Why are they asking? And now, as an insider, now I'm asking because I can't reconcile the abuse that I learned about and the condoning and aiding and abetting of that abuse for one person, which is what I knew about. Now I know it's deeply, I've heard from enough people to see that it is in the very foundation. Now
you have all these countless staff members, program leaders, people who assist. It's not just Werner Circle. It's all these people at Landmark who are literally like experiencing all of the same stuff or similar.
So that's what has me now questioning in a much deeper way. Wait, like, I love your guys' thing. How did we get here? Like, and I'm in the middle of it. I'm not to the other side. I have a lot to learn. Myself. Brian, I would love.
I think I was afraid to. By the way, Roxanne in the comments said this, and I think it's a touche to Roxanne. She said, Brian, you just got telling us that you want to sleep all the time. How is that? Well, I don't know, but I'm unpacking live in front of you. But I don't know. But
can I say something more? What somebody asked me to talk a little bit deeper about the colonization. Can I say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. That's
sure.
Great.
Yeah,
that's
let's get into that.
I think we've gotten that. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, it's hard because the abuse is kind of the most upsetting thing. It's just upsetting. So I just want to acknowledge that for everybody. It's really upsetting. It's just upsetting to hear about people that we loved, people in our centers, people that we volunteered and assisted with.
Just great people, really, like just awesome people who experienced horrible things. And yeah, it is upsetting.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to every one of the graduates that are willing to listen, because I just don't even know how to express how much that means for people to be able to talk and to be able to say what it was like for them. So I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate that. And as I've started to dig deeper, okay, well, what kind of culture foments that, creates an environment for that? Why is that? So in this thing, I love the thing you said, Brian, you shared the thing about being told that being a program leader or staff or whatever, an accountable person in this organization, you are in an army for transformation, and we have the answer. They do say that the Landmark Forum and the technology, the distinctions, the material, the methodology,
the
work is
The
the
tech.
answer. And look, I don't know if I ever questioned that enough to like really drill down. Like, to me, that's one of those thought terminating cliches. It's so easy to just get right on the bandwagon and go, yes, because you're in a high of your own experience. You know, you're in the high of experiencing, having some new way of thinking about some situation in your life. So you're like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to have this. That's the most natural human thing in the world. There's a fantastic book called Referral Engine. Highly recommend it for anybody who understands. So that's really natural. But then Landmark, and it was set up by Werner in the very beginning from the MLM, basis, takes that commitment, that natural, like, oh my gosh, I want everybody to have this great thing that I just experienced, and they exploit it. I didn't know until the last couple of years that what is good in us, that our love and our commitment for people and the planet could actually be used against us. I did not know that. I have been discovering that. It's utterly heartbreaking, and it's essential. Mm-hmm. So it gets used. It gets used to create an army for what? To go out and save the world. How is that any different than the kind of colonization that the Europeans did to take over and civilize Africa? They annihilated the Native Americans of the United States in the name of making them be better, more civilized. They had the way that life was supposed to be, and they came here to convert them and take away. And, milder, but I don't see how we were doing anything different as we marched through our lives, telling everybody that the way that to be in life was to be the landmark distinctions. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me, when I look back, I can say by not understanding and not examining, this was like the big insight that came to me when George Floyd was killed, and I started to study and understand racism and all this stuff. And I have a very, very good friend, very, very dear friend of mine who's Navajo, and I've spent a lot of time with her and understanding the world from that perspective. But anytime you walk into somebody's living room or sit around their dining room table and you say, you know what, I have the answer for you, you are taking a tiny bit, you are being a little bit of a colonizer. You don't know what the answer is for them. And so to me, that's why I equate it with that. Like, oh my gosh, I got indoctrinated in this was the answer. If everybody in the world just transformed, that's why I signed on for the Being a Leader project. They were going to make transformation. They were going to take it into transformational technologies and take it into universities. Well, you know what? A lot of universities already have a lot of transformational technology. It doesn't look like this. It looks like a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this for 50 years, guys, and the world does not look better off. Maybe we don't have the answer, but maybe question.
It's really powerful what you're saying. Eric, did you want to say something? I know I'm a little long-winded tonight. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is, for how long Landmark's been around, I know that they're super proud of the 3 million people that have participated in their programs. And I think you speak about this in your book, Anne. But one would think that if they were really after transforming the world, or if it was really making that kind of difference, that you'd have, millions and millions and millions of people participating in these programs, and that they'd be expanding and that they'd be doing all sorts of things. But that just hasn't been the case. And especially now, where I think somebody was telling me, when I worked on the East Coast, the New York Center would have like 3 forums in a month or something like that. And now they have like one Landmark forum every 3 months, or I don't know if that's the exact number, but I know that it's significantly less than it's ever been. So one would think that if it really was expanding, and if it really was about that it would be different, and it's just not. I mean, 3 million people over 50 years isn't really something to be proud. I mean, sure, it's something to be proud of, but it's not really much. It's not really that.
3.5 million, according to their last press packet, which I saw a year ago.
Yeah, I mean,
it's pitfall.
For 50 years,
like $80,000. Well, I went just from Landmark. That's just Landmark.
No, I think that's combined. That is combined.
Oh, well, that's really terrible then. But
That's terrible.
But the point is, but see, there's more lies, right? So, but see, people wonder, I've heard this a lot. If staff was so bad, why didn't you just leave? So that's the question, guys that are listening. That's the question we're trying to answer for you here tonight. Why did we not leave? We didn't leave because we were convinced that we were changing the world. And you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe we did. I do think we made a big difference. I'm not denying that either. But we don't have the answer for the world. We don't have the answer for everything. I think Landmark could be most successful if it took out all the like dive people down, tell them about how they're insufficient, incomplete, and asshole. Just take all that shit out. You don't even need it. Take it out. Stop with that. Add the 3.5, a gross exaggeration. That's really sorrowful. So, but take all that out. Take the ideas that, put the correct warning labels on them. This is the proper use of this tool. This is the weaponization of this tool, which is another piece they don't do. They don't teach their leaders about how the tools, the ideas can be weaponized. So when they get pressed for results, they start using the tools in ways that are harmful, not helpful. And then just be what you are. Be this weekend program where you can go into your life. You need to be in a mentally well state. You need to be in a fairly, well state in your life. Anything else, you should work with proper health professionals for that. They have those recommendations, but they don't stick with them a lot. And then just be what you are. Like, this is a chance to bring a certain issue in, look at it upside down, inside out, look at it through the lens of some different really powerful views that we created and packaged in our work. And then, you'll have some insights. You'll go out, maybe you'll take action, maybe you won't. It's fine. And then just let them know, like, hey, next time you have something else you want to work on, come on back. It doesn't have to be the answer for humanity to be in there, unless you want to get a staff to work for you for free, which, they have ended the assisting program. So we'll acknowledge that. But now
they have in the United States. I want to keep underlining, and there's some reason, and it's not to create a new era. There was some hidden law issue that forced that. They did not want that to happen. That was a problem for them. I just want to point that out again. Don't want to give them too much credit, since that was the thing that started me questioning everything. Was like, what not that I thought, great, let's end the assisting program and professionalize, but then behind the scenes everybody's crying and upset and not, like losing their shirts.
Well, now people have to get.
It had to happen in 2 weeks. They couldn't just it was an insane asylum, is my personal opinion of that time period.
But
you get a really cool certificate.
So, and
you don't need all of that. Like, Nordstrom's does not give me a certificate for fantastic shopping, right? I get a great pair of jeans, and in a couple of years, when I want another great pair, I go back. And
it makes obvious sense what you're saying.
Yeah.
People have been saying this literally piece. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, there's literally like platforms where you could take a course self-paced, and you just literally do, like, it asks you, like, because I've done it myself. It asks you, like, how many stars do you want to give this course? 4 stars, 5 stars, write a quick review. I mean, there's other ways to do it.
There's a lot of ways to do it. And that's kind of my primary message. And I'm not about Landmark anymore. I live for a day when I don't even have to talk about them ever again. But I am for this industry. I think that the self-help personal development industry is essential. We need it more than ever. I believe strongly in therapy and therapeutic methods. I think we're, in my daughter's journey dealing with her complex PTSD, we've come so far in our understanding of the human psyche and the human brain. There's amazing work going on out there. There's some bad work going on out there. Let's learn how to tell the difference, and let's demand, as consumers, a better, more accountable self-development industry. That is ultimately my message. And, in my book, at the end, I give a couple of my ideas for just kind of core principles, but ultimately that's what I'm trying to say. And I have to talk about Landmark to the degree to which it's my personal experience. So, but I want to be clear. I don't think these problems live just in Landmark. I think Landmark's the big kids on the block. And if they actually pulled their head out of their rear and really started looking and started really updating. I think they would make a huge difference in the industry. What I've learned since the book came out leaves me with virtually no hope that that will happen, mostly because I've now seen for 20, 30 years, they've had every opportunity to change what doesn't work. And time and time and time and time again, lawsuit after lawsuit, complaint after complaint, they make the wrong choice. They double and triple down on old practices that don't work. So
this is where the question of your book, is this a cult, starts to, for me, this is where I get like, okay, the only logical reason that, you know, like we can give all the evidence, they have all the evidence, they know their own online presence, they can see their own business going down, that's all happening. The only logical reason why they would stick to this recipe is that the person who designed it is Werner Erhard, and he's not wrong.
Right.
In fact, the business model is as much the work as is any other aspect of the work for those people at the top. So you can say, guys, maybe you should stop having home introductions, for example. They now do them online. Like nobody seems to want to do them. And that will, you could give them 1,000 other things that would be more effective. They will not hear it. See, this whole
committees have taken, I've heard staff members take whole plans for how they could do their job and accomplish the results in 50 hours, 40, 50 hours a week.
And they don't want to. They've hired staff members. They hired me as one of the people to pioneer the way they were going to do customer service when they did the last rebrand. And I, hired paid staff, and we were going to do this in one hub and one center. And guess what we did? They weren't getting the results that they, quote, wanted. So then they reverted back to the way they had always done things, because that's what worked. So it just, even if they,
because it's a Werner Erhard thing. And I think it's really fascinating. So basically, one of the things they would have to let go of so many things that they hold sacred, like registration, fulfillment, effectiveness. Okay, so if you just let people go online and transfer, then maybe you'll have 50% of the people who signed up for that course will be in it. So what? Who cares? But for some reason, that is like the end of the world. And because that's the way Werner designed this whole company. And it is designed on a recent episode of Chris Shelton, he interviewed Dr. John Hunter, and they weren't talking about Landmark specifically. They were talking about this large group awareness trainings. So these groups like Legacy and the LifeSpring derivative programs, and they all do this. They all have the same way of, on Sunday night, they register people into their next program. And then on Tuesday, they have a guest night. They're all designed that way. That design, they said in that interview that Dr. John Hunter is trying to figure this out. He goes, he figures about 10% of the people carry on after, I don't know, he said like 5-6 months. And that's my experience at Landmark, that if you had 100 people do the forum, maybe 5 finish the self-expression leadership program, somewhere between 5 and 10. It's designed that way. And part of the design is people being skeptical of it, walking in and thinking it's a cult and thinking it's brainwashing, and then walking out thinking it's amazing. That's also part of their brand. That's the resistance is part of the program. The whole thing, everything we complain about here, everything I don't mean complain in a bad way. I just mean like everything we could say this is as harmful, but they would have to admit that this has really not worked.
Well, that's the thing. I think when you say it was designed for, I don't think it's actually designed for 90% drop off. I don't think it's designed for that. It is designed to have people have an explosive, hypomanic experiential state.
It is absolutely designed for 90%
It's designed for that, but it's
drop-off.
not designed to have, no, they know that many drop off, so they have compensating factors. Look, I've been in sales all my life. Everybody knows their stats to an extent, right? And I know, okay,
No, because the money comes with the forum. Harry Rosenberg told us 3 years ago when he got us on the phone and told us the company might not survive, that 75% of the business is forum registrations. The majority of those forum registrations come from people who just did the forum, and the advanced course is probably overwhelmingly half of their business. It's front loaded at
That's
the
what
top.
you mean by, so it's not that the program is designed that way, but the system, the sales
system is designed that way. It's front loaded. A lot of people do the forum, they're on that high, they get their friends to do it, and then they move on with their lives, or they drop out of their seminar, because the seminar is a series of, first of all, I led seminars. I loved a lot of it, but there's, I don't know, all these announcements and guest talks. It's just an evening. It's very much a promotional vehicle as well.
It's another vehicle, yes.
It's designed that way. If you're good at any of this, you tone down the sales and you bring up the space of things. But the point is that it is absolutely, it's got to be, it is designed that way. It's never changed.
The system is designed.
It's managed for that. It is managed for people to leave. It's managed for people's hearts to be broken. It's managed to have people give their guts to becoming a seminar leader and fail in their seminar leading, and fail because they couldn't be this new from nothing thing that they were supposed to, transform, blah, 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 blah. And people go to all ends of the earth to produce results to prove that they have transformed themselves. I mean, the whole model, once you get out of the curriculum and the consumer base, all the business results that they get from people turning themselves inside and out to cause their leadership is probably another, not a full quarter, maybe 20% of the business. The last 5% is just good luck, whatever fills in the gap. It's that pressure Riley was referring to. I talked about the beginning of it, but and we can put this link in the comments. It might not be at the top of the comments because our channel's too small for us to have those privileges, but I will put the link for that yesterday, that podcast on with Dale Dickens. It's brilliant. And what you're learning is a guy who's been at Landmark for 5 years and did the Introduction Leaders Program twice and was candidated and was like their superstar, what he went through and how he was coached and his experience after reading Anne's book.
What I hear
the point is, it's
designed
designed for people's hearts to be broken. It's designed to use people and exploit them. That is my logical conclusion. Otherwise, it would change. So somehow then that means that the mission isn't to get the work all around the world. It has to be sustaining Werner Erhard's lifestyle, because he is the only person, as far as I can tell, who is making millions annually from Landmark.
Right.
That to me is, as we would say in Landmark, the context is decisive. So it's other words, it's designed to give this man his lifestyle, his credibility. These people really did. So many people spent years trying to get Landmark to be more legitimate. They worked Werner Erhard out of the conversation. And in the last decade, as he started getting a little more notoriety, they gave their word to have his life work get fulfilled on, not the satisfaction of their employees, not the missions that everybody had agreed to, not what they were selling the people. They did that, and it's all for him. They idolize him. His work is really, they think it's going to take humanity into, the next couple centuries of evolution. I personally think it might have the impact that Ralph Waldo Emerson had, but that's my opinion.
He was never the source. So you took my little warning flag and have really studied and learned, and and I do want to say that because we're in some of the same conversations and groups together, we've now found the purchase and sale agreement between Werner Erhard and Associates and Transnational, which became Landmark, and which is clearly a document that no attorney in their right mind would ever let an organization sign. Like, it's so slanted for the benefit of the seller, not the buyer. And I mean, it's mind-boggling. And so you're speaking like right exactly to the point of like why I kept asking I'm still asking the question, wait, is this a cult? And now for me, I'm interested in the question even wider than Landmark. Like, why do we keep funneling all the power to the top? Why do we keep giving over our personal power to some, leader person because they have a great tie, or they have a strong voice, or they say something that sounds right to me, or whatever? Like, what the point I make in my book is that for those of us that did get a lot of value in our participation, our main mistake was misappropriating the source of that value. The source of that value was not Landmark. It's not Werner Erhard. It's not whoever forum leader, or even myself, wisdom course leader, or Brian seminar leader. That's not the source of it. The source of it is and always has been you. You took some idea, some notion, some insight, and you did something great with that. And you could have done that reading a book. You can do that going to church. It's available. Transformation is available anywhere where we are willing to look for it and have that happen for ourselves. That's kind of part of my point.
I really love that when you wrote that in the book. I love that piece because, it was something that myself and a lot of people wrestle with. It's like, well, Landmark was great. Well, I got my life out of Landmark, but it was like, no, your transformation lived over here with you. So when you wrote that in the book, I really appreciated that.
I really challenged us, like, no, I really created an amazing transformation for myself while I was doing this program. And you can say the program or not say the program, like, that's up to you, but don't give them the source credit. I just read Ted, The Empowerment Dynamic. I have the book half written on the whiteboard in my wall because it's like so brilliant about the, turning the drama triangle into a creation triangle. I mean, it's amazing. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm going to continue to learn. I learned from history. I learned from, I got a whole business idea from watching a movie about some people that syndicated a horse in a small village in Europe the other day. And I was like, oh, I finally got clear about this business model for my business Illuminate I've been trying to get going. So,
well, I want to say something about this. And I love that. So the other thing I was thinking about, I don't know, there's terms and stuff that's getting thrown around in all these conversations that I don't always know. One of them has been double bind. So I think for us graduates of Landmark who this has become Landmark, it became more than just taking some courses, like we went all the way in. For that smaller subset of people,
we were that 5 or 10%.
Yeah, exactly. So for us, there's a couple things. One is that I have been Mr. Landmark to everybody in my life for decades.
Cheers.
So my personal reputation and all the people that I've had conversations with and I have stood for. And I mean, it took something to even when Anne's book came out, I didn't want anybody to know I was even reading the comments. Like, I mean, it is such a huge thing because you get trained in this over time. This is like that, how you boil a frog is slowly over time, you raise the temperature, so I personally loved, I think, every second of my Introduction Leaders program. I think I absolutely adored every minute of it. I know other people have not had that experience. I think I personally did. But, in the Introduction Leaders program, they start weaving into you representing Landmark as like a core piece of who you are. Yeah. So it's kind of like you're in this when you're the dissonance, the working all that through, and that I have been Mr. Landmark, and now here I am seeing all these things that don't work, and then you take it to Landmark, and then it doesn't really get resolved. It puts people in a really weird situation where you've been such, and by the way, why I'm bringing this up is because you talked about people attributing the value. Well, we were all trained to do that.
Exactly.
I have all this ingrained material about, and I've talked in front of groups well before I was ever a program leader, like, Brian, come up and tell your story. I mean, like, this is so in my DNA. I don't even know what life would be like if I wasn't a walking, talking source person for, like, saying how fabulous it was. I mean, and so I even have a hard time when we deconstruct it to go, wait. Was it really as awesome as I thought it was? And my answer is yes. So when people say I did go to therapy, I did read books, I did all those things, none of them made the difference that those 3 days did. I don't care what anybody says. It was awesome. Maybe it was just a dopamine hit. Well, I have friends who do cold plunging and they are totally on fire.
But Brian, you didn't do just a cold. You got a dopamine hit, and then you became an addict. I love the way Seb and Riley down in Australia, who have been sharing a lot, they keep comparing Landmark to.
Well, I became an addict to a social group of people that
when Riley
really
said
empowering.
We're Landmark junkies.
I know, but sir, I'm so sorry. And then having structure in my life and a place that would hold me to account to do things like go run a marathon. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of good. I think there's a huge healthy aspect to this whole group and its people. I just think I do. Now I might down the road, as we keep asking the question, how did I get here? I might change my mind about that, because one of the things that I've learned in my post-Landmark life is that I can change my mind. I didn't just constitute myself as what I just said. I am not like declaring that as my word is myself. I'm just saying that as I keep looking through my family, I know the trajectory we were heading on, and I know what happened when I did the forum and then what happened for us. But I also can hear the legitimacy in what people are saying. And I do believe there is a place for this type of program. Maybe what people need is a dopamine hit, or people like me need that hypomania state once every 3 months to keep themselves living life and looking forward and get their past erased, like the Men in Black wiper. Maybe we need that. I don't know. All I know is that they don't need an army. They don't need to be abusing people. They don't need to be lying. They don't need to be exploiting people. They don't need to be coercing. None of that shit that's been around forever, that people have been, and it's all true. As much as they're
I can tell you, I haven't done a large group awareness training in years, and I can tell you, I took a week off with my wife, no kids last week. I did a cold plunge. I went to the spa. I read a book. I connected with friends. And you know what? I came back from my trip and I was like, let's go. I'm so ready for, what we're bringing. And so maybe there's other ways where people can find that. My wife's been getting up at 5:30 in the morning to exercise every single day after feeling like she's exhausted at the end of every day because she's working and she's, so tired. But like, she's rejuvenated. She's ready to do this. So I do think, Brian, to your point, we as humans, we need that. But at the same time, it's like, do we really need to go through, do I really need to go through having a center manager choke me out, because I'm not keeping the registration targets in order to feel loved again and that dopamine hit? Probably not.
And Brian, look, with all respect, let's talk in 5 years when you've had some time for your sympathetic nervous system to actually not need that constant jolt. Like, it is interesting that it's taken me a long time. And that's part of this post-book thing's been a little hard for me because it's thrown me back into the Landmark, where my life had really evened out and was, even with a pandemic and my business is closed and all of that, it wasn't, life was more on an even keel and happy. My husband and I were did some of our best creating in our marriage. We traveled. There's a lot to be said for what we're learning now about the state of the brain. We're now understanding that the brain does most of its learning when it's in the parasympathetic position. When we're asleep, it's actually repairing and learning. I think the fundamental problem is that Landmark is addicted to its source. It's addicted to its source, and it's following its source off the cliff. And look, I have compassion. I actually have compassion for Werner Erhard, because the other thing that happens when you turn, when we, to use Landmark language, when the listening starts to idolize and turn somebody into a guru, or turn them into the source, or turn and put that on them, it is not healthy. I watched Werner change from I met him in 2010. I hosted the first program in 2012. And the man that he was and the leader that he was in 2012, as compared to 2019, when we ended that project, he was not a healthier version of himself. And it wasn't just because he was older. As he was back in front of the audience that adored him, and literally, I remember somebody asked him, actually, I read it in Outrageous Betrayal, and then I saw it happen in the Being a Leader course somewhere around 2017. Somebody said, "Are you Jesus? Are you Christ? Are you somebody literally asked him that question in, like, it was 2016, 2017, something like that. Now, he had a much more eloquent answer than how he answered it back in 1972 or to whatever they're quoting in Outrageous Betrayal, where he basically, I have the quote in my book where he basically says, I'm not Jesus, I'm who sent him. In other words, I'm God. That is, but I'm telling you, there isn't anybody that was put in that position with that much adoration, fame, and people turning themselves, their consciousness and their awareness over to them, that would not become some kind of twisted guru. So yeah. I don't excuse Werner for the abuse that he labels on people. That is his sickness. He's never handled it in his whole life. He's going to die with it intact, and hopefully he'll deal with it in the next dimension. I don't know what that is. That's not okay. Just not okay. But there's a lot that his life represents that I think we can learn from, that isn't about him being some evil person. It's about what happens when we stick any person on a pedestal and we turn ourselves over to them, any deity or person or ideology. We stop our
or own distinction, or turning ourselves over to the distinction seminar leader, turn myself over to the distinction committed listener, turn myself over to center manager, turn, to that's how they talk at Landmark. So I'm just pointing out, like, they don't have deities.
They have designation. I love your call to end the whole designation thing.
Yeah, that was great.
And I consider myself, honestly, I still am a wisdom course in my own head. Like, I am a wisdom course leader. I actually think I lead the wisdom course better now than I ever did when I was leading the program, because I live from the idea set. But it's not that I am that and not all the other things. It's like, I'm a mom. I'm a wisdom. I led the wisdom course 44 times for thousands of people. That will always be in me. I can't excite. I still think from networks of conversations. Whatnot. I was given the gender identification of a woman, so that's fully integrated into me. I'm a white woman, that's fully integrated into me. I'm a pretty woman. One of my other privileges, by the way, there's literally studies that say tall, white, pretty people get privilege. I am all three. I have all that.
What's that song there's a song that's kind of trending right now, and it's like, get me a man that's 6'5", blonde with blue eyes that works in finance.
Yeah.
And it's like super trendy, but that's like totally what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, you can read it in Cialdini's book, Influence. There's another book, Focus. I can't remember who wrote it. Really good.
I think this is a good moment in the cute humorous break. I want to end tonight by giving people the opportunity who have a question to ask some questions in the live chat. So at this point, if you type something in the live chat, your name and whatever you're signed in as could appear. So who has a question or a comment for Anne? Now nobody wants to.
I'm going to answer one that went by earlier while we're waiting, which somebody said, do I think that it could be done safely and well? And right now I do, but I'm learning a lot. This is what my second book will be about. I'm already starting to formulate a second book, which will be about what does it look like to do group trainings and development safely? which I'm unfortunately, learning by what's not, but that is where we're going. We're currently hosting the Safe Practitioner Workshop. We're piloting a program for practitioners of programs, products, and services to actually explore what does it look like to be a safe and ethical practitioner.
Can we get Ed and Dr. John, Seb saying, can we get Ed and Dr. John Hunter on the same episode?
Yes, well, I'm already working on
that would be great. Anne's working on it.
Yeah,
and I have a question for you while we wait. So my question is, like, what do you, in your opinion, well, hold on a second. We have somebody here. Brian, can you put that on there?
I just saw Mirna. Thank you. You're welcome, honey. I love it.
Okay, keep going.
So, well, I saw a question there, but Anne, I'll ask you this. In your opinion, everybody's going, Landmark, Harry, Joan, the executives, they are going, the forum leaders, they're all going to Werner, right? As source, you work with them.
Yeah.
So my question is, like, Werner's getting older. What, in your opinion, happens when he's gone? Because they don't have that person to fall back to. Is it become Harry?
They've been working on that
Mark Spiritos?
That's where the whole thing about turning source in forum leaders. So they've been trying to have the forum, that first the S trainers, the forum leaders are supposed to be a recreation of Werner. You have, Joan and Harry, but they have problems. They all need to retire. Just retire, please. Just retire. Go live a fantastic life. Retire. You've created dozens and dozens of amazing graduates. Just retire. So that's my thing. But they, no, they'll just turn it over. They'll continue. They've been developing people to be Werner for years. Now that's not going to ever really work. We'd have to do a whole other episode on why that doesn't work. And we definitely want to bring Ed or some psychiatrist in here to explain why that's not a thing. But that's what they'll try to, that's what they've been trying to do for years, so that when he passes, he's 88 years old. He's not well. He's going to pass probably sometime pretty soon. But I think, like the rest of great figures in our history,
and quicker answers.
We're willing to look. We can learn from Werner, and we can go do better. We don't need Werner.
Here's the next question. You got so much benefit from your participation. Is there a way for people to participate now that would work? How can people get that benefit now?
Don't do the forum if you have any sort of mental health issues. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do it to resolve. So really don't, especially if you have bipolar disorder. Okay. So that, unless you're very stable and you're working with the help of a mental health professional. And I'm only saying that way because I've now heard of so many more than I ever knew, people that go through the forum, 1, 2, 3, a forum, that do really have mental health breaks. And so I think that's important. So if you're in a fairly stabilized mental health position, then go through it. Don't sign up for anything. Do not go into the Leadership Academy. Don't sign up to become a member. Just do the program, take the nuggets, take the insights you have, and then go explore those. Using the forum in conjunction with other methodologies, I think, is really healthy. Doing it, if I were to do right now, I would not do the forum nor recommend it, but that's because too many people are being hurt, and I don't support an organization that is so awful to its people. That's my personal.
Somebody asked on here, like, if we would recommend the forum to our friends and family, and it's an immediate no for me. So not at this point. So, I mean, I've recommended many people. I've registered so many people over the years, but that's kind of where my answer is.
There's other work out there that I think is useful. If I could get, to me, I don't want to put one more dollar in their pocket until they stop.
I'm not putting another dollar in Werner's pocket. Yeah, right. My money as an ESOP member is already going to building this building at Fullerton, which we didn't even get to talk about tonight, but that's a whole other topic.
We're moving on to the next question, everyone.
Okay, Brian.
Okay. What is a good way to interact with graduates who still participate in Landmark's programs, who may not be aware of all the abuses we were talking about?
It's a good question. I
I
mostly
just bring
say,
up Anne's book.
yeah, well, and I often, people will, they don't ask me, now I'm so out, nobody asks me, but for the last few years, I would say to people, I no longer participate. And then knowing who I was, a lot of times they would go, why not? And I say, well, because I've learned about a lot of abuse and a lot of financial malfeasance and a lot of stuff in the organization that I'm just not willing to support, no matter how good the work is. And then the main thing is then let them ask questions. And if they don't ask questions, if they stop, don't push, because that means they're not ready to hear. And if they're not, this is so upsetting to our reality. Like I've had, it took me 3 years to get to where I could talk about this like this. And I just say little things like that.
And I think that's good. You know, I know staff members and seminar leaders who are still participating and leading programs and in Leadership Training Academy and the whole thing. And when I've had this conversation, because they've watched some of these episodes and some of them have read Anne's book, they're not oblivious to what's happening. And, you know, just kind of tread lightly. That's the way I've done it. I just say I'm no longer participating and, you know, just keep talking about
reading my book.
We're moving on.
Which I appreciate, because Mark just said read, but here's the thing. People don't see that that's a question. So people who are afraid to find out they've been in a cult, their whole reputation is tied up in it. So I say, hey, the book is actually an honest memoir and an honest look at the question. It's not.
And you don't even say that it is. It's that people are so quick to jump to that conclusion. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
All right.
Would any of you allow friends or families to do the form now, even if you gave them all the information? Well, I'll answer that. The answer is yes, because the whole point of this is that people have informed consent. So if they have all the information and they want to do it, I'm not going to allow people. I mean, that kind of takes away our whole message. Allowing is really not what can I do?
Well, if they want to do it, but I
stop
just
them from getting on Zoom. You know, like I can't make anybody do anything. But if they have if they have the whole information and they want to do it, I mean, even if part of the information is that I don't think it's. I mean, I don't know why people would recommend it. Just given what everybody's saying, I personally wish the graduates would just go to them and be like, knock it off. We don't need all this crazy stuff.
The graduates have been going to him and saying that for years.
No, but I mean a massive amount all at the same time. I would love to see that. And because if people stop sending people and paying their money, they'll change. Because
I just had this image, Brian, of like the teachers and the students going on strike at like school districts and stuff like that because they're underpaying their teachers. Like I have a lot of friends of mine that are teachers, and how great would that be if all these people just walked out the forum or out of their programs, seminars, or whatever because they needed a message to be heard.
So Sebastian's asking other questions about, have we seen the newspaper articles, all that? Yes, you know, we're collecting. I've seen hundreds of them. So I think Sebastian's bringing up a point about, as he's doing his own deconstruction and studying, he, like me, like you guys, we're starting to find out about a lot of other damage that has been done because people who were unwell did the forum, had psychotic breaks. I've identified at least 3 murders. You know, we all know of somebody who did the forum and committed suicide. Like, I think that a good friend of mine, Martha, had a really great suggestion, is that Landmark should shut down for a year and really do the work, like really just stop all the action, look at all of the evidence and reconstruct based on what we know now. We just know things about the brain and how we work as human beings that we didn't know even 10 years ago. So
without the current board, shut down without the board and all those people.
That they all need to go. But in my opinion, but
okay, we're coming with the next comment here. So,
okay, moving on.
Jeremy says, have y'all spoken about how if you enter ILP, you're cut off from any other work? I came in late. And then he followed it up with his comment.
I can't remember.
It's one of my fundamental issues with the org. Anything that cuts people off from the rest of life and other healing modalities is not interested in people's healing, growth, and transformation.
And in fact, Jeremy, that's one of the main signs. Look up Robert Lifton's 8 Signs of a Cult, and that is one of them. And that's one of the defenses that Landmark has had publicly is that they don't cut people off from their families. And it's just not true.
They just don't say that they do. They just do it in other ways. You're just going to be there like 20 hours a week after you've worked your full-time job.
Well, none of these organizations that I've been, most of them that are controversial and are called culty, like Scientology, like Mormonism. None of these, they don't necessarily cut people off directly from their families. Maybe that's true in some weird religious cult with like David Koresh, but besides that, I think most people can be in contact with people. However, when your whole life is being consumed by this organization and it has no boundaries with that, then it does end up separating you. At 26 years on staff, while assisting on top of that the entire time, I didn't participate with my family. I saw them a couple times a year, and I loved a lot of that. There was a lot of really hard times in that lifestyle, but I do feel like I missed out on a lot and I didn't realize it for sure. All right, good. Okay, that was a really, really good question. And just to answer your question, by the way, in Landmark's newest form, only in North America, maybe that is now getting out beyond North America, they ended that policy about doing other stuff. And they had to do it because they started having people to pay to be in the Leadership Academy. And the Leadership Academy, like if you're an introduction leader, you go and you lead introductions. You're paying to lead introductions now. And then you also pay to be somebody who goes into breakout rooms and registers people online. And when they started asking for people's tuition, they could no longer have that kind of agreement with it. So, because now they're rebranding themselves as like, the ultimate in creating leaders. I will tell you that one of the many calls that I've received since doing this, though, was that in the Seminar Leader program, they were even told they couldn't read books.
What?
They were told they couldn't read books inside the other disciplines. And
see what I mean? As soon as you think you can't be shocked.
I know. And then finally, when they were told they could read books, because enough people threw a fit about this is about 8 years ago. When they threw enough fit about it, people, they go, so we can read whatever we want to read now. The head chairperson, seminar leader, guru to the stars, said to the person, well, if you have time to read that, then you're clearly not preparing your seminar.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is it the guy that starts with an L?
I'm not getting into that. We have agreements not to call people out on this call.
Okay.
But that's what it looks like to be in a high control, coercive, indoctrinated environment, to be shamed and to not have your own voice. That's just a very good way of when people speak up. It is how it is interacted with, that you spoke out of turn, so to speak. So that's super great.
Yeah.
Okay. But you do get a certificate, somebody said, in the new academy.
Well, it's great, Brian. You just mentioned something that was one of the ways that Landmark uses to manipulate is accuracy. So, and it was fun. We just led a session at this Safe Practitioner Workshop about accuracy, because that's one of the Safe Practitioner promises, that you'll be accurate, and you'll separate your opinion from verified, researchable fact like that. But they'll say, I mean, we had this with the Being a Leader course, like, oh, we did a course at Zayed University, and they would always list that as one of the academic offerings. Well, the only thing we did at Zayed University was rent their conference space. Like, Zayed University was very clear that they had no backing or endorsement or involvement with the course being conducted there. But yet they'll state it. And when I called them out and I said, hey, you can't say that. That wasn't an academic offering. In other words, hosted by an academic source. And they said, well, we were at their spot, weren't we? So in other words, they were kind of like using this like exact accuracy to defend lying. And you see that a lot. So yeah, we don't cut you off.
Yeah. That's called misinformation. And
Yeah.
it's also one of the key ingredients in high control culty groups, which might be part of why Landmark keeps ending up in a reputation for, because like I said before in that interview I did, if you don't want to be called a cult, maybe you shouldn't act
acting like one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's many things. The thing about accuracy, and we're going to wrap up here now, but I just also, we need to do another,
We need another
and you need to
episode.
come back for sure.
Anytime.
And because there's so much to be said. One of the things that I find interesting at Landmark is that how rigorous the terminology is. And yet they take words and repurpose them.
Yeah.
Words like enrollment, words like participation, words like integrity, words like responsibility. So when other people try to call them out on things like using responsibility to gaslight, they literally gaslight you for using that expression. They go, no, you don't understand what responsibility is.
Right.
That's not, no, you're just hearing that as blame. It's not blame.
Right.
That's not what we mean by responsibility. Now, when I was telling you, you're not being cause in the matter of your center because there, you're saying there were circumstances and there was a snowstorm, but you still didn't keep your word. No, I wasn't blaming you. That's not cause in the matter. Cause in the matter is a gift you give yourself. See, it's more highfalutin than, it's way more
word salady.
It's not just word salady. It's always done with an air of like, there's nothing wrong or right, or, it's done like, you mustn't be clear about the distinction if you think that that's what's happening in responsibility or with enrollment. All these people, you don't really get. Well, somebody said that about the assisting program. They said when you were assisting, it was your job to get 10 times more out of it than you put into it. It puts the onus directly on the person, not on the people delivering it. That's a good example. Enrollment. I mean, I'm quote unquote a very enrolling person. This is a label I have, but you could hear people go back and forth. Well, that's not enrollment. Enrollment's really this magical thing. Oh no, that wasn't enrollment that happened with Riley and Seb and blah, 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 blah. So people, it's like they weaponize the distinctions. But they made up all these terms of words that actually never existed, and they are 1000% a word salad. And I think that whole dynamic keeps the exploitation in. So we need to do more conversations.
They just don't train their leaders well. That's why it's so inconsistent, and you don't,
No, it's because it's bullshit is what I'm trying to say. That's not the definition of responsibility. That's something that no matter how good you get at responsibility, you can never get that whole 300-word document in your bones. Are you kidding? Do you know how many times I have flattened the integrity document? It's an impossibility way of living life. It's meant to create an unfillable gap for a human being so that
that's why it's a mountain with no. What was it? That's why it's a mountain with no top, Brian. You're just like never gonna get there. That's what it is.
But Werner got there. He's there. He's the ultimate. He's the mighty, and that means well, that's where we'll leave off. And any final, I'm gonna be quiet. Eric's gonna be quiet. And what would you like to say tonight to wrap up our time together?
Honestly, I just really want to invite people to ask their own questions. Like, just ask questions, read, research, learn. Don't even listen, listen to us, listen to other people. Like, on my isthisoccultbook.com website under interviews and media, I started to just put like everything there so you can find all the different where people are talking about this. I just think it's so vital that we're talking about it, even if we're sloppy and messy and whatever, but keep talking, please keep talking so that we can really understand everything we've done right everything we've done wrong, and so we can build a better future. Like, to me, that's what human evolution looks like, is we learn. We learn. We learn from the good stuff. We learn from the bad stuff. We talk honestly. We go, we cry, we scream, we yell, all those things. So that's what I really want. That's why I wrote the book, is I wanted us to start, all of us, and know that you're not alone. I think the most important thing for me is I've found so many staff members that literally for years have been hidden away alone, thinking that they failed, that there was something wrong with them. I want to tell you, there was nothing wrong with you. The system is fucked up and it's broken. And it's been broken for a long time. You're fabulous. There are friends out here. Come, share, talk, share your stories. Let's laugh, cry together, and let's create a better future for the personal development field. Honestly, that's what I mostly want. That's what my book's about. That's what my next book will be about. That's what everything I do is going to be about, probably for the rest of my life.
And I really want to thank you. Thank you for saying all that. And I have watched you be true to yourself. I've watched you make choices. I know people have commented like the book was just a funnel into your business. And I've seen you, maybe you even thought, oh, cool, people read the book and want to, but I've seen you guide an entire community of people that have been hurting. And you've also simultaneously been waking up people. And you've also been simultaneously like standing your ground. And you've done it every time I've interacted with you. Your advice and coaching has always been with more concern for the person or the people you're talking to than your agenda. And you are walking your own talk about, and as you're learning what is safe and how to seek, I'm a seeker, so how to seek safely is a very powerful and potent message. And I really just want to thank you for the difference that you are making in so many people's in their real lives. So many people that have cared so deeply about people and this world around them. So thank you, Anne.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And
thanks for coming in to back me up. Like, because I know so much stuff. I just, anyway, thank you both for speaking up, because it's not me personally. Yes, it backed me up. Like, I'm not making stuff up. And I think it's important for us to understand what's been going on. I love Riley. I listened to him this morning. I don't know when he recorded it, but this morning when he said the front of the store has changed a lot. It's been a candy store. It's been a clothing store. It's been whatever, but it's been a meth lab in the back. And until we get really honest about that, and we really examine that, and we examine what had us keep going to the store, even when we knew something was wrong, it's just time. It's just time. It's time for light. And
it was really the right time, and I knew it was the right time to back you and to speak out publicly about it. I knew it was the same for Brian, and I know it's the same for the countless graduates who I'm sure have reached out to you, who've said same here. The time, like, it was the right timing. And so, just along with what Brian said, thank you, Anne, for just kind of pioneering this movement here.
All right, we're going to put this up as a feature.
All right.
Post on isthisoccultbook.com.
Yeah, and everybody, if you're finding this valuable and you want to support our channel, please subscribe to it on YouTube, and please like this video. And everybody, we will be back live again next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific. Good night, everybody, and take good care of yourself.
Good night.
That's so funny. My watch just had a timer and it just went off. I'm like, what happened?
Okay, yeah, it's